Hello, team. Back again, aren't we? Who would have thought it? Fucking hell. We're back again. Here we are again. A guy called Fred is coming on a podcast called @fredasquithonfilm and talking about film again. What are the chances of that? It's crazy, isn't it? And here you are again. Here I am again. Here we are together again. @fredasquithonfilm, TikTok and Instagram, where you can see all the reels and clips from this podcast in video format, which is, I do film this in video. It is on YouTube, but I realize that the popularity is really coming through on the audio platforms, and that's okay. But if you do want to see a slice of this kite, is that northern slang? Might be. Of this face, then go check it out on @fredasquithonfilm, TikTok and Instagram. This is a very exciting episode today. We're going to be reviewing One Battle After Another, the new Paul Thomas Anderson movie, the new Leonardo DiCaprio movie, I should say. And we're also going to be, after that, ranking Paul Thomas Anderson movies in general and putting One Battle After Another in there, just slotting it in there. Where does it go? We are also going to be talking about some miscellaneous news up top, which I will start with now and then finish off with the main event, which is One Battle After Another. Your boy got a fucking Blu Ray player. Your boy has now got a home cinema system. I bit the bullet, right? Because I've been a streaming guy for a while, and I've been happy with that. The quality of streaming, the quality of movies on streaming platforms has been good enough for me, especially Apple TV, where you can buy 4K versions, Prime, you can buy Ultra HD versions. But the more I've read into it, the more it seems like, and I'm not very technically minded, but the more it seems like the bit rate, I think is the right phrase, is throttled by the very nature of the fact that it's being streamed. I always just thought, it's the equivalent, right? It's HD or it's 4K. It's the equivalent of having a 4K Blu Ray. Apparently it's not. So I've gone and bought a Blu Ray player. I've also gone and bought a Dolby Atmos fucking sound system, which my darling wife hates. It nearly blew her tits off because it's loud as fuck. I've bought three new... three new Blu Rays, two of which are 4K, to accompany this purchase. The first one was the Blu Ray North by Northwest, because that was £1 in a local jumble sale, and I was like, fuck yeah, I'll have that. I think also First Man as well. Yeah, I think also First Man was in the jumble sale, just having a look there. That was £1, so I've actually bought four. And then the two 4Ks, they're actually like super embarrassing in a way, because like, me calling myself a cinephile and my two first 4Ks are Love Actually and Titanic. Oh my God. I was just like looking online, like, what am I going to want to watch in 4K? Obviously that's Titanic. And what am I going to want to watch over and over and over again? That's Titanic and Love Actually both fall into that category. Like, those are films I can guarantee I'm going to want to watch soon, and I'm going to watch in 10 years, 20 years, and maybe by that point I'll have a fucking chip in my brain. And to be honest, I saw an advert yesterday for the new Meta glasses where you can literally watch something in front of your actual eyeball. So me talking about buying something as a decade-long investment is probably a bit silly. But anyway, I do want to see Titanic in 4K with this fuck-off subwoofer. And Love Actually I'm going to watch, obviously, in 2 months, because despite the fact its morals and values haven't aged that well in some ways, I do think it's still a good-hearted movie that I like watching at Christmas to give me those warm and fuzzies. But we'll be talking about that around Christmas. Anyway, a couple more tiny bits of news. So my sister, I put this on my WhatsApp. I put this on my my Instagram story. My sister messaged me saying, I've booked some time off work. I need to have some me time, and I'm off to see A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey. And I can't wait, right? And my sister is the type of person to like that type of movie. And if anyone who listened to last week's episode, you'll know I fucking despised A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey, and it was actually not the worst film I've seen this year, because that honour goes to Happy Gilmore 2, but it was my biggest rant of this year, and I got a lot of comments on last week's episode and DMs talking about how they were like, wow, you weren't joking that it was a rant. I went fucking nuts about this movie, because, like I say, even though it wasn't like a half-star movie, it made me angry, and it might have made me so angry because maybe there was potential there, I'm not sure. Anyway, I actually seem to be part of the consensus, which I was surprised about. I actually didn't realise that people were disliking it as much as I disliked it. I wondered if I was being a bit grumbly. Anyway, so when my sister messaged me this, I thought, shall I tell her that the consensus is that it's fucking wank? And I thought, absolutely not, because she might enjoy it, right? And it is the type of thing that she might enjoy, and that's okay, because as we know, the moral or the creed of this podcast is, if you're enjoying it, that's okay, right? And that doesn't mean I have to agree with you, but I'm happy if you're enjoying something. That's what film is all about. That's what art is all about. Just trying to fucking enjoy yourself and waste some time flying around on this fucking rock floating in space, okay? So if my sister wants to go to the cinema and enjoy herself, then great, and I didn't want to stop that. If she was going to go see, like, something that I know she would hate, or I would suspect she would hate based on the preferences I know of her, I might have mentioned it, but I'm being a good brother. I was like, yeah, go enjoy yourself. Anyway, so I put this on my Instagram story, and I put a comment beneath it saying, never let your own opinion get in the way of someone else having a good time, right? Anyway, I got a DM response to that from one of my lifelongest friends. This I've had this friend. We don't meet up very often, but I feel like everyone's got friends like this, where you've known them literally since nursery. Like he is, or maybe not even, do you know what? It's not even since nursery. He was since reception in school, so since like 4 or 5 years old. But it's basically like I've known him since I can remember anything, right? And I got a message and they said, oh, you told me this when we were 12. And I was about that Instagram story that I put up. And I was like, what? And they said, yeah, you said when we were 12, we'd gone to see X-Men 3 and we thought it was awful, which we did. And someone had said to us, oh, I'm going to go see X-Men 3. And I'd said, no, don't go see X-Men 3. Vinnie Jones is awful and blah, blah, blah. As in, he'd said that. And then you, Fred, said, why did you say that to them? Because they might have gone and had a good time at X-Men 3, right? And I was like, oh my God, I'm so impressed with myself. Point being, right, is that the ethos and creed of this podcast, little did I know, has been my mantra for film viewing and sharing film with people around me since I was 12 at least. What an emotionally mature 12-year-old. I wanted to allow someone to go ruin their life for X-Men 3 because I'm a benevolent, is that the right word? Like, I'm just like, I want people to go see if they enjoy it. Go try and enjoy it. If you enjoy it, fantastic. Fucking hell, mate. Fucking hell. And if that isn't proof to say that I was destined to have a film podcast, then I don't know what is, right? Fuck yeah. I said, I can't believe it. I thought I was a right twat when I was 12. And he said, no, you were a twat. And I was like, okay. See you around. So last bit of news is this really interesting. I normally ignore posts like this, to be honest, but it was just, you know, there's type of like ancillary movie pages on Instagram, just like put up like an image and they put a big headline there, and it's kind of what I do. Anyway, it's a picture of John Malkovich, and it says a movie made in 2015 will not be seen until 2115. Well, how are we going to say that when we get there? I won't get there. 2115. Basically, 100 years after it was made. In 2015, director Robert Rodriguez, who is known for like the El Mariachi, Zorro, fucking, what is it? It's not Zorro. You know what I mean? El Mariachi, Desperado, starring Antonio Banderas. He's known for, he did Death Proof and fucking Thingy with Quentin Tarantino, I think. Anyway, he directed a movie with John Malkovich in 2015. It's called 100 Years, that's the title, and the project is scheduled for release 100 years after it was made in 2115. Fucking hell, I'm butchering this. It's created in partnership. It's literally a massive ad. It's created in partnership with Louis XIII. Is that how you say it? Louis XIII Cognac, which is a wine, I assume. Is cognac wine? Doesn't really matter. Which itself takes 100 years to mature. So they're conjoining the fact that this film is taking 100 years to mature, and the wine will take 100 years to mature, and they'll come out at the same time, and it'll be one big fucking ad, I imagine. Just 1,000 metal admission tickets were issued to be passed down through families to attend the premiere. So the premiere tickets have already been issued. So no premiere passes going out to fucking influencers like me. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. I really like conceptual projects. Like, this reminds me of Boyhood, Richard Linklater's Boyhood, where he filmed over the course of, 18 years or something, from birth to adulthood of a young boy's life. And, it wasn't my favourite Linklater, but it was such an ambitious and interesting project. And I just think, why not? Like, I want creative people to be as creative as possible outside the bounds of traditional commercial movie making, distribution, whenever possible. So I'm really excited that that's even a thing. And I'm not going to be here when that's released, but I'm just excited that it exists. Right, speaking of things that I'm excited that exist, sip of my juice. Sorry, that wasn't a reference to my juice, me being excited about the juice. That was a reference to the movie that I'm about to talk about. We are now coming on to one battle after another. I had actually avoided the trailer in advance of seeing this movie. So if you do not want to, I advise you to not actually know anything about this movie before you go and see it. Needless to say, go and see it. But I just want you to know that I'm not necessarily going to give spoilers in this review, but I would probably just not listen to any of this if you're going to go see it, really. I mean, it's your choice. I'm not going to give plot spoilers or anything. It's your choice. I'd avoided the trailer in advance. Regardless, here's the synopsis. One battle after another is a story of Bob, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, who is a washed-up revolutionary, which I got confused about that because I thought revolutionary meant like a Civil War revolutionary or something. I know that's dumb, but anyway, it means he's almost like a hippie revolutionary, like freedom revolutionary, who lives in a state of stoned paranoia, surviving off-grid. His evil nemesis resurfaces, evil nemesis played by Sean Penn, and Willa, his daughter, goes missing, and Leo then has to scramble to find her as both father and daughter battle the consequences of their pasts. Pretty vague plot, to be fair, for a 2-hour, 50-minute movie, but that's appropriately so. So directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, we'll come on to his filmography, but his filmography includes There Will Be Blood, in my opinion, the best movie ever made, The Master, Magnolia, just some brilliant, brilliant movies. One of the most proficient, prolific, and like decorated, at least critically decorated, directors working today. So that's the synopsis. I was nervous about this movie. I was nervous because I'm a fan of basically every single Paul Thomas Anderson movie to varying degrees, which we'll come on to in the ranking after this. But the key difference here is that I could tell it was being marketed, despite the fact my attempts to avoid the trailer meant that I was literally walking out of cinemas in advance of movies coming on because I wanted to, like, the trailer would come on, I'd go get myself a drink and come back, or like YouTube ads, things like that. Like, I was basically avoiding it, but I could tell it was being marketed on bus posters and whatnot as like an action movie. The critical quotes they've got on there is like the best action movie of the year and things like this, which is so unusual for a PTA movie, which is generally very overly lingual, wordy, and I love those things, but still. Also, Steven Spielberg came out and said it's the best action movie he's seen in a decade or something like that, and I was like, action movie? Anyway, it's also the biggest budget for a Paul Thomas Anderson movie ever. So I've got a list here of the adjusted budgets for all Paul Thomas Anderson movies. Basically, at the time of making, Magnolia was only $37 million, but adjusted now it's $67 million. And so adjusted for inflation, that's the highest budget he'd had before making this movie. For reference, There Will Be Blood was $25 million. Anyway, so this movie was $100 million, a big budget for a Paul Thomas Anderson movie. So what does that mean? I'm thinking, like, what scale are we talking here? Is that just the fee for Leo DiCaprio, like, or and Sean Penn, or is that because we have set pieces in here? Like, are we? Is this a completely different style or tone for a PTA movie? And I was nervous about that because the aesthetic of PTA movies is something that I feel very precious about. I think he does that better, whatever that is, which I'm going to try and come on to explain. He does that better than anyone else. It also missed the festival screenings. So usually a film like a PTA movie you'd expect to screen at Venice or Telluride, or the one in Toronto, TIFF, yeah. Or even the LFF, but it didn't. It's missing the festivals. So therefore you'd think it probably wasn't going for awards potentially. So I couldn't work out if they if the marketing team loved this movie and were pushing it as a blockbuster, or if they were pushing it for a hit and run, like, fucking hell, just say Leo's in it, get it out, everyone will forget about it kind of thing. And you can normally glean quite a lot from the marketing ploy of movies as to how the marketing team are feeling about the potential success of that movie. So I was kind of confused. Anyway, turns out it's fucking fantastic. Let's go. Sipping my juice. Turns out it's fucking fantastic. And I told you I'm not going to give spoilers, as in plot spoilers, but I am going to do, and instead of babble, because I want to make this review worthwhile listening to for someone who hasn't seen it, right? And safe to listen to for someone who hasn't seen it. So instead of babbling with a play-by-play of my thoughts, I've decided to try and capture my thoughts in 6 bullet points about Paul Thomas Anderson. And the bullet points are titled, "What is so good about Paul Thomas Anderson?" Okay? This is going to be my way of explaining what is so good about One Battle After Another through the prism of Paul Thomas Anderson's qualities. Okay. First things first, he is a master at truly character-led comedy. Paul Thomas Anderson movies are some of the funniest movies I've ever seen, containing some of the funniest scenes I've ever seen and lines I've ever heard. And yet it's never, ever reaching for comedy. And on first watch, a lot of the time, his movies don't even appear to be comedies. And yet on second watch, Phantom Thread is the best example of this. That's the Daniel Day-Lewis, like, Taylor movie. On second watch, Phantom Thread is fucking hilarious. Even There'll Be Blood points in that movie are fucking hilarious. He has such an incredible sense of humour, but it is always baked in character. None of these throwaway quips for trailers or whatever. It's always, like, you'll never see a line that is interchangeable between multiple characters, which long-time listeners will know it's something that bothers me. It's never reaching for comedy in the sense that if it doesn't make sense for the character to do this action or do this even pratfall or do this one-liner in a scene because of the emotional state of that character or the nature of that character, then they won't say it. They won't do it. If it does make sense for those things, then the line will be in. If the line doesn't make sense, it won't be in. Do you know what I mean? So, like, it's never, ever going to be listed as, like, the best comedy of the year, but they're always super funny and in such a legitimate way. This movie is probably the first time, I mean, it's been marketed as an action movie, like I say, but it's probably the first time I would say to someone, go see One Battle After Another, it's hilarious. On first watch, this feels to me like his funniest movie. And that's saying something because he's had some fucking funny movies. Punch Drunk Love is hilarious. The phone calls between Adam Sandler and Philip Seymour Hoffman. Yeah, shut up. And like at the end when he goes, "That's that mattress, man." And then Philip Seymour Hoffman walks up to him and goes, and Adam Sandler goes, what? And Philip Seymour Hoffman goes, "That's that." I can't even explain why that's so funny if you haven't seen the film. If you have, you know what I'm talking about. Like, he's made some funny movies, and yet this seems like the funniest. The funniest, just straight out. You could list this as a comedy, and it's still, again, like I say, in such a, legitimate is the wrong word, but you know what I mean, way. And the action is also extremely well handled, can I just say? So yes, I would also say there is definitely thriller elements to this, chase elements, kind of chase movie, action movie elements, and it's handled really well. Less said about that, the better, because I want you to enjoy it when you go see it. But just to say that there is nothing to worry about with PTA stepping a foot into a slightly ensconced genre there. Back on the comedy side of things, we have got an actor, Leonardo DiCaprio, doing something better than anyone can do it, in my opinion. Even Joaquin Phoenix, which is saying something. I spoke about that recently with Eddington, right? With Joaquin Phoenix in Eddington, I said very few people do manic, panicked anger better than Joaquin Phoenix. Well, one person who does is Leo DiCaprio. We all love that clip of Leo DiCaprio in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, improving in his caravan, smashing around in the caravan. This movie is like that entire scene, but for 3 hours, and that's a good thing. This is Leo in manic, panic, crazy, angry mode for comedy. And no one does that better than him. Fucking brilliant stuff. Back to the list. What else do I like about PTA? Oh, this is so important to me. I'm getting shivers just thinking about this, because he's so incredibly good about this. So, talking about the character-led comedy, talking about the characters again, there's always such a dense cast of characters, but you know every single one deeply due to the quality and the efficiency of the writing and the performances that he's directing. So there are small characters in all his movies, and even if they're only in it for a scene, you really feel like you understand them as a person, because like I say, he's efficient with his language. I always equate PTA to Quentin Tarantino because they came up at similar times, they're best friends. There are some elements of their writing that is quite similar. They're both quite verbose in their own ways. But in my opinion, Quentin Tarantino is egotistically, gratuitously verbose, whereas PTA is efficiently verbose. So they'll both have a 2-hour, 50-minute film, but PTA has packed that with dense, efficient, beautiful language. Quentin Tarantino has packed that with inefficient, dense, and often beautiful language. Do you know what I mean? So what happens in these PTA movies is, like, the best example away from this movie is in The Master. There's a scene in The Master which is about Philip Seymour Hoffman running a cult, basically, that Joaquin Phoenix is part of. There's a scene where they're at this party, and one character challenges Philip Seymour Hoffman on his creed and ethos and his religion, basically. This one character makes more impact on that movie than potentially as much impact on that movie as any of the lead performances, and he's only in it for that one scene because it's perfectly cast, perfectly written, and perfectly utilized as a character. So there are characters in one battle after another that are only in it for one scene, 2 scenes, 3 scenes, but they're as richly drawn as the main characters, and it's such a skill. It's such a skill to not feel like the ancillary characters are dispensable, like they're just tools for plot. They are never tools for plot. PTA is underrated as a director of performance, and I think that all feeds into that point. So on the plot point, back to the list now, point 3, another thing that I like about PTA, explorative, meandering plots that feel intentional. So this is a 2-hour, 50-minute movie. A long movie is not alien to Paul Thomas Anderson. A lot of his movies are 2 hour 30 or more. And I am a stickler. No, I'm not a stickler. I am sensitive to long movies because I'm sensitive to movies being egregiously, gratuitously long. And we go back to the Quentin Tarantino comparison. In my opinion, Tarantino writes for writing's sake, and every Tarantino character sounds like Quentin Tarantino himself. And Tarantino just loves the sound of his own voice, and he's just writing, and there's not really, it doesn't really feel intentional, right? You know, people can. I'm not hating on Tarantino, but I'm using it as a reference point. Tarantino has so many qualities. I'm obviously not saying he's a bad writer. That'd be ridiculous. But I'm just saying, as a comparison, with PTA movies, you get the same sense that he's having fun, like you do in a Tarantino movie, but it's always with intention. It always feels like, again, it's character-driven. It feels like you're not following a traditional structure of a movie, but you are following logical steps driven by the characters that is not resting on its laurels and is not waiting around for paint to dry. It's always it's intentional, it's propulsive, it's explorative, but propulsive. One interesting thing I heard about Paul Thomas Anderson's writing style is that he did this interview once where he says the way he devises movies is that he thinks of a character that interests him, and then he thinks of a character that can challenge that character, and then he writes a plot about them. He just decides where would they want to go, what would happen between them, what would happen next, what would happen next. So he almost writes these movies like a novelist, really, not adhering to a structure necessarily. And that makes complete sense. When you think through his movies, it's always one character pitted against another. Whether it's in a romantic way, like Licorice Pizza, you've got Cooper Hoffman pitted against Haim's character, or it could be in a antagonistic way. So in There'll Be Blood, you've got Daniel Day-Lewis as Daniel Plainview pitted against Eli, played by Paul Dano, the vicar or the reverend or whatever you'd say. Again, in kind of an antagonistic head-to-head. And then you've got Phantom Thread, you've got Vicky Creeps' character romantically but also antagonistically pitted against Daniel Day-Lewis. If you look at basically every single one of his films, that writing approach becomes clear. Two characters pitted against each other. And this movie is no different. It's Sean Penn's sort of military character pitted against Leo DiCaprio's ex-revolutionary hippie character. And that is just a recipe for gold. Sean Penn is on absolute fire. I don't agree with his views outside of movies. I don't really like who he's become as a person, but he's on fire in this movie. His performance is brilliant. Leo's performance is brilliant. And there is, like I say, such a rich sea of ancillary characters perfectly performed around that. And throughout this movie, I had such a big, stupid grin on my face. As this meandering but intentional, propulsive plot plays out, I had a stupid grin on my face all the way through. I cried. I felt tense. I was absolutely riveted. I did not check my watch once. I did not shuffle. I did not blink. It feels like I was completely locked in. Another thing I like about PTA, we're on point 4 of 6 now. Another thing I like about PTA, he's got a distinct visual style that is forever future-facing. He's got a distinct style in general that is forever future-facing. So, for example, his style, his approach to music, especially working with Johnny Greenwood recently, ever since There'll Be Blood, he's worked with the ex-Radiohead band member Johnny Greenwood. Johnny Greenwood's contribution to Paul Thomas Anderson films cannot be underestimated. It always elevates an already elevated experience. This score is no different. It's tinkling away. It's always percussive and strange and maddening in a way that you can feel in his scores of The Master and There'll Be Blood and all the movies in between. But it's operatic as well. It really is expansive, this score. It really feels like so much richer, I guess, in a way that the Phantom Thread did as well, in a way. And then his visual style, Paul Thomas Anderson's visual style, this kind of like, he's mastered the long take, the dolly shot, the tracking shot. He's almost mastered the kind of ultra blocking long shot that Steven Spielberg does sometimes. He's mastered shooting dialogue in a way that feels engaging. And yet both these elements are so distinctly Paul Thomas Anderson, and he's been doing it so distinctly since at least 2007. There'll Be Blood. It feels like these stylistic elements have been locked in. It never feels static, and it never feels stale. And I think sometimes you do get a sense of staleness with directors who have been successful for a long period of time and or who are getting a bit older. Paul Thomas Anderson is not getting a bit older. He's in his 50s, so we've still got a lot of PTA movies to come, which is extremely exciting. But he's been doing it a long time, and he's been doing it a long time under a lot of scrutiny, because his visual style especially is something that is put under a lot of scrutiny. Every time his movies come out, everyone compliments his visual style. And this movie is no different. And yet it's still not feeling stale. It's not feeling like he's playing the same notes, painting with the same brush. He always finds a way to make it feel fresh, energetic, vivifying, riveting. You know, like sort of like that Spielberg thing. I love Spielberg, but like that Spielberg syndrome of like, okay, he's doing the lens flare thing and he's doing the blocking thing, and whatever movie he makes, he'll always do that. Every single movie that Paul Thomas Anderson does, it feels part of the same palette, it feels along the same thread, and yet entirely its own thing. He is a master of every element of his craft. That's the end of that point. Point 5 of 6. He works with the best of the best whilst also being idiosyncratic. So, and this is really important in regards to One Battle After Another, because this is his most commercial, accessible movie by far. This is funny. This is exciting in almost a kind of traditional way, in a way. I could without doubt send anyone I know to this movie and be like, yes, it's long, but you're going to have a fucking great time. Just like, you know, Quentin Tarantino's got a bit of a chokehold on the casual movie fan. Like anyone who's owned a DVD ever will have owned Pulp Fiction or Inglourious Basterds or whatever, and they might not have ever watched any other film. Like, they might hate movies, but everyone knows Quentin Tarantino. That is kind of this movie in a way. Like, you can send anyone to this movie and be like, you're going to have a fucking great time. It's the most crowd-pleasing. It's the most accessible. That 100 million budget has gone to great use, but it's still held together masterfully. It's still sophisticated, and it's still elevated. And so on that point, he works, he is the best of the best, and he works with the best of the best, Leo and whatnot, but he's still idiosyncratic. So he plucked Adam Sandler out of comedies and made Punch Drunk Love with him. He's putting commercial music in this movie, and there's without batting an eyelid, he's doing that. And previously he was so steadfastly working with Johnny Greenwood, and he wasn't a kind of using modern commercial music, and now suddenly it's in here. He is having fun here. This is super, super fun. He's not precious. He's not too proud. Every single film he makes gets nominated for Best Picture, and yet he's not bothered or worried about stepping outside of that comfort zone. And I'll say it, this is probably the closest thing I'll get to a spoiler, but it happens in the first 2 scenes, right? There is a moment at the start of this movie where Sean Penn's character is introduced to us as being someone who gets an erection, right? He's literally this military character who gets a stonking hard erection, and that is literally the basis for his entire character journey, is him trying to reconcile his attraction towards the woman who gave him this erection, who happens to be Leo's wife, right? That forms the basis of this entire movie. An erection. That just goes to show that PTA is not too proud to be silly, and it just goes to show that this movie is more willingly than ever leaning into the comedy that PTA does so well. Final point, and this is a point about this movie, he is clearly not past any discernible peak. Okay, this is a guy who started his career with Hard 8 and Boogie Nights. Boogie Nights is still one of the most celebrated movies of the 90s. For me, it stands head and shoulders above something like Pulp Fiction, made of a similar era with a similar vibe, above something like Goodfellas, similar era, similar vibe. But, you know, for the wider critical consensus would agree that it at least stands shoulder to shoulder with those movies. You'd think, okay, is this a new exciting director, or have they peaked too soon? He goes on to completely, like, Magnolia is an epic, like, force majeure of a movie. It's insane. I don't even like it that much, but I have to respect the reach of a director who's just been critically decorated to the high heavens with Boogie Nights, going out and making Magnolia. It's such a challenging and such a like a daring movie to make. 3 hours that ends with frogs raining from the sky. And then you go on to Punch Drunk Love. Just completely boils it back down. 90 minutes, tight, kind of paranoia comedy with Adam Sandler. And rom-com as well. Absolutely fucking brilliant. I know a lot of people have that as their favourite PTA. And then he goes and makes There Will Be Blood. What the fuck? In my opinion, one of the best movies ever made. And you might be like, okay, this guy's made, 4 or 5 movies by that point. He's gone and made one of the best movies of all time. We now know to be definitely one of the best movies of all time. Surely that has to be a discernible peak. No. He goes and makes The Master. The Master has so much quality. And it's not There'll Be Blood, but it has so much quality in it. He goes and makes Phantom Thread. In my opinion, that does stand shoulder to shoulder with There'll Be Blood, Boogie Nights, Magnolia. And now he makes this, okay? I give this movie 5 out of 5 on Letterboxd. This is a special day. Happy 5 out of 5 day, everyone. Because everyone who's been listening to every episode of this knows that I've never given anything 5 out of 5 live on the podcast. I obviously have on Letterboxd if you go look at my account, but nothing that has been released since this podcast started. I've not given anything 5 out of 5. Weapons got close, okay? But this is 5 out of 5. And secondly, that's because I am, to some people, I'm considered like quite a harsh giver of stars, right? That's by the by. Everyone can review movies how they want to review movies, and everyone has their own subjective opinion on how to star rate, and also subjective experience of movies themselves. Personally, I like to reserve and leave space in the 5-star category, and even the 4.5 really, but the 5-star category for truly great movies. I think this is a truly great movie and potentially an instant classic. My criteria for a 5 out of 5 movie is that this movie has no major flaws. You were never bored, and you can see yourself rewatching this and talking about this movie for decades to come. This movie falls into that category. I think is absolutely exceptional. And I'm now going to do my Paul Thomas Anderson ranking, okay? From least favourite to favourite. And I was going to say worst to best, but I'm going to say least favourite to favourite because I like them all, right? Least favourite. How many have we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We've got 9. Okay, not including One Battle After Another, which I'm going to put in at the end. We've got 9. So in at 9, we have Inherent Vice. This is the Joaquin Phoenix kind of inspector novel, stoner crime movie based on a book by Thomas Pynchon. And this is probably the one that I never really connected with on any level. I think because I'm not a stoner, I've never really connected with that style of comedy. I don't like Pineapple Express, for example. But it's a great movie. It's a really fun watch. His least good, is that a phrase? Movie is still an extremely solid movie. Next up, Magnolia. I've already praised this movie to till the fucking cows come home. I think it's incredibly ambitious and such an interesting movie. Personally, on rewatch last year, I found it to be slightly overwhelming, slightly overbearing watch, slightly baggy in a way that I have now come to love PTA for being so efficient I do think that is the one movie I find of his that is a bit baggy. So that's at number 8. Number 7, we have Licorice Pizza. This was the Cooper Hoffman-Heim kind of rom-com, kind of like more of a love letter to the valley in California, just like, oh, we're just like teens running around, like getting up to hijinks. And I think that's my 7th favorite because it doesn't feel as intentional as his other movies. And it was his most recent movie, and I was kind of made me slightly more nervous for One Battle After Another because it kind of made me think, oh no, if PTA turns into more of like a vibes guy, that's not going to be my kind of bag. Anyway, it turns out everything's fine. At number 6, we have Hard 8, which is the kind of casino-based movie starring Gwyneth Paltrow and John C. Reilly. This was his first movie. What's interesting about this is, for a long time, I thought Boogie Nights was his first movie, just because I was young, I didn't know any better, and I was like, oh wow, he kind of came out onto the scene like fully formed, almost like his first movie was the equivalent of like Pulp Fiction in a way, and then it all made sense because then I looked into it as I became a bigger and bigger fan, and I was like, oh, there's Hard 8, which is like his Reservoir Dogs. There's always. That's why I equate them as well, because they both have these like bombastic, poppy, like, what's the word? Magnum opuses. I mean, they've both got multiple magnum opus. But anyway, Pulp Fiction and Boogie Nights are a similar aesthetic. And they're at the exact same point in their careers, the second movie. Okay, and the first movie, Reservoir Dogs and Hard 8, are both much more discerning, much more somber, restrained movies. And it's probably his one movie that doesn't lean into the comedy at all. And so it's a different experience, but you got to give it to him. It was his first movie and it's extremely solid. So that's my 5th favourite PTA. Then we've got at number 4, Punch Drunk Love. Punch Drunk Love, the rom-com with Adam Sandler. Like I say, this is the tight 90-minute movie. Now, oh, sorry. Fuck, I've missed one. Sorry. At number 5, we've got Boogie Nights. I've already said a lot about this movie, but, what an achievement at such a young age to orchestrate this vast ensemble of new and also experienced actors. You've got fucking Burt Reynolds in there. You've got fucking Julianne Moore in there. You've got a young Mark Wahlberg. It's sprawling. It's epic. It's hilarious. It's shocking. Like, what an achievement. So that's my 5th favourite PTA. 4th favourite PTA, Punch Drunk Love. What I love about Punch Drunk Love is that I love the paranoia. I love the mania. I like crazy people. I like anxious people having a breakdown. That's just comedy that I love. I love it in One Battle After Another as well. And Punch Drunk Love is a whole movie of that, basically. But I also love soppy love stories. And I love people chasing their dreams in soppy romance movies, and that's got all that in it. And it is a bit of a stressful watch because the music is nuts and the pace is kind of relentless. But I think it's fantastic. So that's my 4th favourite movie. My 3rd favourite, and this was a difficult one, is The Master. Joaquin Phoenix, Philip Seymour Hoffman movie about a religious cult. The reason why this is difficult is because in terms of actually watching it front to back, I think Punch Drunk Love and Boogie Nights I enjoy much, much more. The Master, as a full watch, is at times quite difficult. And at times, like, you feel the running time a little bit. But there are moments in The Master, there are scenes in The Master that are possibly... They're up there in my favourite scenes of any PTA movie ever. The peaks of that movie are extremely high. And that's not to say the lows of that movie are necessarily low, but the highs are very, very high in The Master. The scene that I mentioned about the guy challenging Philip Seymour Hoffman at the party, or the processing scene where Philip Seymour Hoffman asks Joaquin Phoenix loads of questions and he's not allowed to blink in the belly of a ship. The cinematography of that movie is sumptuous. And actually, that's a good segue to go on to my 2nd favourite PTA, which is Phantom Thread. He was down as the cinematographer of this movie. So he's a writer, director, cinematographer at this point. Robert Elswit, who'd shot There'll Be Blood, didn't come back for whatever reason. I've forgotten what he was attached to. And so Phantom Thread was shot just by PTA. He clearly knew what he was doing because Phantom Thread is a sumptuously looking movie. There's more lock-offs, there's less dolly shots, less movement. It's more stately in keeping with the topic. Daniel Day-Lewis playing a tailor, falling in and out of love in this toxic relationship with Vicky Creeps' character. This is a sumptuous movie, and there are multiple shots in this that literally could be canvases. Could be paintings, and that's such a cliche, but they really could. Daniel Day-Lewis's character against the mountains of the Alps. Daniel Day-Lewis and Vicky Creeps hugging in the ballroom at the New Year's party. Or they're not even hugging. I think they're just having like quite an intense moment where he's gone to find her. This is incredible visual storytelling. And speaking of which, I probably will get some canvases of them. This is a movie I've watched probably 10 times. Like, I absolutely love it. I love the romance of it. I love the mischievousness of it. Like when his character's ordering sausages at the start and it's a little bit salacious. I love that it's, like I said at the start of this podcast, like low-key a fucking hilarious comedy. I think it's Leslie Manville who plays his sister who lives with them, and they always have arguments at the breakfast table. You shut right up. Don't want to step. Oh, what did she say? You don't want to start a fight with me. I'll go right through. You won't come out alive. Like, there's just fucking there's so much intensity in this movie that's such a boiling point that it's actually hilarious. Like the way Vicky Creeps' character's eating toast super loud at the breakfast table, and Daniel Day-Lewis's character is like so fucking angry at that. I relate to that so much. Which brings me on to, I mean, you know, Daniel Day-Lewis's performance in Phantom Thread is one of the best performances in any movie ever. Which brings me on to what I think is the best performance in any movie ever. My number one PTA movie is There Will Be Blood. That's no surprise to anyone. Anyone who listens to this podcast should and will have seen There Will Be Blood. It's one of the best movies ever made. I don't think anyone will question that nowadays. I felt it at the time when I saw it as a youngling. I felt it when I rewatched it over and over and over and over again. I can't wait to rewatch it again. It's like I said about my criteria for 5-star movies. It hits this is a movie I potentially think about this movie weekly. It is indelibly embedded in my brain. It has some of the most majestic sequences of all time. The sequence where Paul Dano is pushing the spirit out of the church and this dolly tracks in and tracks out. The sequence where Daniel Plainview is getting slapped by Eli in church. I've abandoned my child. It's become a meme and yet still isn't a laughable scene. This movie is majestic. What a director could make this one movie and be an absolute legend. And yet he has made, by my count, like 5 classic movies, okay? Speaking of which, where does one battle after another go in this list? Well, let me tell you, after a suspenseful sip of my juice. Tipped it all over the sofa, I'm too excited. One battle after another goes third. Wow. Now that is really saying something. And I know it's just my fucking list and this has no impact on this earth or anyone on it. But the reason I say wow is because I actually never anticipated that could even be possible going into this movie. And I actually I just didn't expect it based on the small things that I knew about this movie. This movie is third. So it goes number 1, There Will Be Blood. Number 2, Phantom Thread. Number 3, One Battle After Another, which in turn is above The Master, Punch Drunk Love, Boogie Nights, blah, blah, blah. One Battle After Another, I'm putting third for now, but when I go rewatch it, and I've got tickets to go rewatch it in IMAX on Friday, it might push up for me to second. It's not going to usurp There'll Be Blood as the best PTA movie, because There'll Be Blood is one of the best movies ever made. I do think this One Battle After Another is certainly the best movie of this year, and if I don't end this year with that being the case, I will be fucking flabbergasted. And it is absolutely one of the best PTA movies ever, which in turn means it is one of, in my opinion, one of the classic movies of recent years, recent decades, right? Let's just try and keep the language as calm as possible for now. But I just want to stress, I think this is an incredible achievement, this movie, and it passes my criteria for I will rewatch this, I will think about this, I will talk about this for decades. I had a classic cinema experience that I will treasure for the rest of my life. I'll remember having that big grin on my face throughout this movie. There are so many small elements of this movie that I'd love to talk about in detail and bore you to fucking tears. I think this movie is an incredible achievement, and on rewatch, I could potentially see it hop into number 2, above Phantom Thread, as my second favourite PTA movie ever. And that is seriously saying something. I can't wait to see it again. Go and see this movie. It is exceptional. Oh my God, I'm so happy to get that off my chest. I've been so excited. Oh my God. So as I record this, my recording has gone over an hour, and I vowed to you I would never go over an hour, but that's how excited I am about this movie. I'm going to cut that down in the edit, because I tend to cut out bits here and there where like the door goes or whatever. So I'm going to cut that down in the edit. So this is not over an hour. I will never go over an hour. I vow to you. An hour is way too long for a fucking podcast. So what's coming up next week? I'm going to go see The Smashing Machine at a preview on Wednesday night. That's the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Emily Blunt movie about Mark Kerr, the UFC fighter. I'm off to see The Lost Bus, which is the Paul Greengrass, Matthew McConaughey movie, the true story about a bus driver who saved people in the California wildfires. That's being released on Apple TV, but I'm off to see a preview in the cinemas on Wednesday, same day as Smashing Machine. That's what's coming up next week. I will end it here. Thank you for listening. Go and see One Battle After Another at fredasquithonfilm, TikTok and Instagram. We are fucking out.